This is Brad from Riot Glass, and in this tutorial I'll show you how to install the Surface Mount ArmorPlast system for shallow offset framing and doors. You can also find written instructions and diagrams of the anatomy of the ArmorPlast system at riotglass.com. If you have already watched how to install the full frame system, you can skip ahead to the 2-minute mark of this video. Let's go over the tools you'll need for this project. A tape measure, an adjustable carpenter square, a drill gun, lots of drill bits and screw drive bits, a planer, a jigsaw, a pencil to mark the extrusions before you cut them, a chop saw with a blade that's suitable for cutting aluminum, a couple of saw horses, some painter's tape, some denatured alcohol, a suction cup for moving the panels around, a nylon hammer, and a piece of 1x1 for mounting the caps. Keep an X-Acto knife handy as well. And if your ArmorPlast system is going to be exposed to weather or pressure washing, make sure you have clear silicone and a silicone gun. Of course, no job is complete without a shop vac. You're also going to need some window cleaning supplies, including a spray bottle for some mild soapy water, a Triumph blade holder and extra blades, paper towels, a squeegee, a Teflon hard card, and light-duty Scotch-Brite scrub pads. Kits are available at riotglass.com. If you ordered your ArmorPlast in kit form, you'll now want to locate your map that you made during the measuring phase. As you unpack your ArmorPlast kit, you'll notice that the extrusions and the panels are numbered. Those numbers correspond to the windows and the cut sizes you entered when you submitted your map and measurements. Clean the glass and framing using as little water as possible while still doing a really good job. I recommend that you clean the whole row of windows at once, so when you come back to the first one, it's had time to dry. We'll also use the hard card and paper towels to wick away all the excess water. We're now ready to focus on the specifics of installing the Surface Mount system. We're going to focus mostly on doors in this tutorial because if you can install on doors with all the workarounds, installing on a regular shallow frame window will be fairly easy. We're going to be installing the system onto the frame of the door, not onto the stops. The ArmorPlast framing may cover a little bit of the stops, but the screws will be into the framing. One of the first things we need to do is determine whether or not we're going to mount the pull handle of the door on top of the ArmorPlast system, or if we can run the system between the handle and the stop. So 3/4 of an inch is the determining dimension. If we have less than that, then we need to put the handle on top of the ArmorPlast system. This door has a very wide style, so there's just enough room where we would not need to put the handle on top of the ArmorPlast system. First thing we're going to do is remove all of the stickers and other debris that's in our work area where we're going to be installing. Next, we're going to need about 1 1/8 inch clearance here, so we're going to come out onto the stop, but the screws are going to go directly into the door frame, not into the stops. So that's a wide style door. But on this narrow style door, you can see that from the outside of the handle to the edge of the stop is about 1 1/8 inch overall. So this door requires that we mount the handle on top of the ArmorPlast framing. And you can see in this post-installation photo how that's going to look. The Surface Mount system utilizes the same wedge we use in the full frame, but the cap is a little different. It has a return that covers up the edge of the panel. The tubing used to make the pull handles is usually about 1 inch in diameter. So here we're just checking our positioning to make sure that our marks are correct and that the handle will be centered on the ArmorPlast framing. So now that we have the exact position of the outside of the ArmorPlast frame, we're going to go around the whole perimeter of the door and mark where that's going to sit, just so that we can gauge what we need to do in terms of working around the lock cylinder or maybe hinges that are encroaching in on our mounting surface. In this case, the distance from the edge of the frame is 1 inch. So we're just setting the edge of the carpenter square on the edge of the frame, not the stop, but it's 1 inch down from the edge of the frame. Once we've got our marks all the way around, we're able to visualize where the framing is going to go and if anything is going to encroach into our mounting area. You can see we just barely clear the hinge in this case. If we hadn't cleared that hinge, we could do two things. We could either notch the ArmorPlast framing, or if the distance was not very significant, we could lower the panel down to clear the hinge, and then just revise our marks at the bottom. Back out the set screws and remove the outside pull handle and shoulder bolts. In this case, the shoulder bolts are short and there's an insert in the door. But in most cases, the shoulder bolt will go all the way through the door into the inside pull handle. So when you're removing it, it's wise to have someone hold that inside handle just so that it doesn't swing down, potentially breaking the glass. You're now ready to prepare the ArmorPlast panel for mounting. Place a mark a 1/4 inch above and below the lock cylinder. Now measure the distance from the ground up to the bottom mark that you made on the door. Check both sides and make a note of that distance. We're going to cut wood blocks that we're going to use to set the panel on to stabilize it during the mounting process. They need to sit at an angle, so cut them 1 inch longer than the distance from the floor to your bottom line. In this case, the distance from the floor to the bottom line is 10 inches, so we're cutting our wood blocks at 11 inches. Now we're going to measure the distance from that bottom line up to the mark we just made under the lock cylinder. Make a note of that distance. Also note the distance between the two marks. It's a good idea to make a small diagram just to keep track of your measurements and so that you can visualize the template. We're also going to cut a little cover piece for the edge of the panel right here. Here's a post-installation photo so you can visualize the end result. Now place your ArmorPlast panel with the attack side facing up, and you're going to tape off and mark around where the lock cylinder is going to go. Use your diagram to double, triple check all of your measurements before you start cutting. You definitely don't want to make a mistake here. I recommend putting some clean towels over your sawhorse before you place your panel on them. Sometimes metal shavings can get embedded in the sawhorse and you could inadvertently scratch the bottom side of your panel. Once all of your cuts are complete, it's time to dry fit the panel to make sure that everything fits perfectly. Use your foot to support the block so that it doesn't slide out, and then when you set the panel on there, it'll be stable. You can also slide your toe back and forth to sort of adjust the panel up and down. This is a great technique, especially if you're installing by yourself. Check all of your cuts and the edges of the panels to make sure everything lines up with the marks that you made earlier. Now you're ready to install your panel, but first let's clean everything really thoroughly with a denatured alcohol. Make sure that any grease and debris is off of the framing of the door. Now apply the provided clear double-sided weather stripping tape. It's very important to overlap the corners. This prevents dust and moisture from getting in between the panel and the glass. Carefully trim around the lock cylinder, and keep in mind we're also going to add some silicone in a later step. You're now ready to install the wedge. We start by installing the vertical sides of the wedge, so measure the vertical length of the panel. In this case, it's 72.5 inches. Double check that your door is plumb, and if so, you can cut both pieces together at the same time. We just have them bundled together here. Now it's time to do your final cleaning of the glass. You really want to take your time on this step because anything that gets trapped in between the panel and the glass is going to be difficult to remove later. So get down low and look at it from all angles. Make sure there's no grease spots or any type of debris. Now it's time to install the desiccate strip that comes with your kit. Just remove the adhesive backing. We're going to install this on the bottom stop. So just prepare that surface with a denatured alcohol, and then once you install it, use your finger to press down evenly all the way across. Pull back the protective lining on the tape just on the corners and crease the edge. Before we install the panel, we need to peel off the clear backing. The clear side is the interior facing side. And we just want to make sure we get any dust and debris off of that so that the static doesn't pull it onto your interior surface. Now use the suction cup to manipulate the panel into position, setting it on the blocks for stability. And double check that all of your lines match up perfectly all the way around your lock cylinder and along all sides, top and bottom. Pull the backing from the tape out from underneath the panel. Press down evenly all the way around to make sure that it seats properly. Peel back the masking to make room for the framing to be installed at the edge of the panel. Every door is a little bit different, and on this particular door there are these front-facing hardware holes for the pull handle shoulder bolts. Make a mark on the door and also note the distance from the edge of the panel to the hole. You're going to need to drill those out and you won't be able to see them with the wedge installed. Now it's time to install the wedge. Start with the verticals first and hold it in place as you bore out the panel. Remember, we're just boring a hole in the panel, not through the frame, and install the first screw at the top of both vertical sides. This first screw just holds the wedge in place and makes it easier for you to bore out the rest of the holes. It's a good idea to add a piece of tape to control the depth of your drill bit and ensure you don't accidentally drill into the frame. We're only boring out the panel material to make way for the screw. This helps prevent waste from getting trapped beneath the wedge as you use the self-tappers. Your panel will lay down flatter. Now install screws in all of the vertical wedge holes. Now cut and install the horizontal wedge in the same way you did the verticals, but leave a gap between the horizontal and the verticals on all four corners. We need this room to install the cap in the next step, and the gap will be covered by the cap. On this particular door, we need to bore out the holes for the shoulder bolts that hold the pull handle on. You should be able to locate them using your notes and markings from an earlier step. At the end of the video, we'll show you another way to do this when you have a through bolt rather than a front-facing bolt. You're now ready to install the cap. You can use a small scrap piece of the cap as a measuring guide to show you the difference in height that you're going to need to use when you're calculating your vertical cap lengths. You can see at the bottom here that the vertical goes a little bit below the wedge, and that enables it to line up perfectly with a horizontal cap. Start the cap by hand, but then use your hammer and a block to seat it in properly. The block just prevents you from accidentally denting the cap. On this particular door, we're going to go ahead and install the pull handle since the shoulder bolts are front facing. Use the shop vac to clean around the lock cylinder. We're going to install the provided end caps now. Use enough silicone to provide weather resistance and to keep water out from between the panel and the glass, but not too much so you don't see it squeezing out around the edges. Now install your interior pull handle. Remove all of the masking and do a final clean. Remember to put a Riot Glass sticker in the bottom right-hand corner of the panel, and congratulations on a job well done. Now let's take a look at the other type of push-pull handle set. This one's going to be drilled from the inside after you install the panel. This one's a little bit easier than the one we did earlier in the tutorial, but make sure you use a block and a clamp to hold the cap on as you're drilling so it doesn't pop off. In your kit, you'll find an extra long 1/4-20 shoulder bolt that you can use. This compensates for the extra thickness of the ArmorPlast system, and you reinstall the handle set the same way that you removed it. Your kit also includes extra long 1/4-20 bolts with a Phillips head. Sometimes you're going to run into slightly different configurations than what's shown in this tutorial, but the surface mount system is extremely versatile and can be adapted to almost any storefront system. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call at the 800 number on your screen, and our tech support will be happy to assist you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.